All right, so I'm going to very briefly go over the agenda here, and then we'll jump into things. So we're first going to do a quick tutorial of Zoom for those of you who are new to the Zoom environment that we've been thrust into lately. Alder Furman will do a couple quick introductions. Staff, that would be me, will do a very quick discussion on what the adopted plans and the process is for this proposal. And then the development team will provide an overview of what their proposal is. And then we'll spend the majority of the meeting asking questions, trying to provide answers, and discussing the proposal in general. So just very briefly, the meeting is for participants to learn about the project. We'll ask questions, provide feedback. As I said, we'll have discussion and questions after the developer's presentation, and then we ask that we have one speaker at a time. For Zoom, please keep your microphone muted when you are not asking a question. This avoids background noise. If your connection is a little bit spotty, it really helps to turn off your video. It will keep the screen from freezing. It'll make it run a little bit more smoothly. And then we're using the raise hand function if you'd like to speak during the discussion time. This is not me. I'm not Chris Wells or Kevin Furco. These are my colleagues, but this is an example of the screen. Over here at the bottom left in the circle, the yellow circle shows where you can start and stop the video and also mute and unmute yourself. At the bottom center of the screen, there's a participants button. If you click that, it'll open up the menu on the right-hand side, and there should be an option to raise your hand, and then both myself and Alder Furman will be able to see that you have raised your hand and would like to ask a question. If you're joining over the phone, *6 toggles the mute and unmute for you to speak, and *9 toggles your hand being raised. If you have questions during the meeting or are experiencing some technical difficulties or anything, or if you have follow-up that you would like to conduct after the meeting, you can email me, Colin Punt again, cpunt@cityofmadison.com. I am going to stop my share right now, and I am turn it over to Alder Furman and for some brief introductions here.
Thank you very much, Colin, for going over the basics. On behalf of Alder Hennick and Alder Martin, I want to welcome everybody here this evening. We're going to have, as Colin noted, we're going to have some presentation from Colin talking about the planning process and what the different steps are. I expect this to be one of many meetings for this project, but this will give everybody a very good overview of the project from University Research Park and the developer Mandel group. I'm going to leave it at that. Look forward to hearing feedback and hearing questions later on. And I'm going to turn it right back over to Colin to talk about what the approval process is for this project.
All right, thank you again. I will go back to my presentation here. So I'm going to discuss what the development process is for a proposal like this. This is a very simplified kind of flow chart of how developments in the city of Madison occur. When a developer comes to the city, we initially have pre-application discussions, and that's kind of where we are right now. The applicant has spoken with city staff. They have spoken with Alder Furman and some of the other area alders, and they are working out what it is that they intend to propose and build as part of this process. When the city staff, the alder people, through the neighborhood process, the neighbors are able to provide feedback, and when the developer kind of settles on what it is exactly that they are ready to present, they will then file an official application with city staff. City staff then take that application and send it out to a number of different city agencies. And this is quite a large number of agencies. In addition to planning, the Office of the Zoning Administrator sees it. City engineering sees it for road construction and for stormwater and for utilities. The traffic engineering division sees it. The fire department sees it. The parks division sees it. City forestry. The list goes on and on. So basically everything that you can imagine that the city does, someone from one of those agencies is going to look at this. Those agencies then provide recommended conditions of approval. So if when this goes to the Plan Commission for a public hearing, if it is approved, it would be approved conditioned on these recommended conditions from the various agencies. So those could be as simple as city engineering mentioning that they have to abide by a certain stormwater requirement to pretty in-depth things about the alignment of a roadway or payment of a fee for a certain improvement, things like that. For this particular type of development, it does not stop at the Plan Commission. This also requires common council action. This kind of explains what the different types of approvals there are. At this point, the developer is only looking for zoning approvals and a plat approval. The plat is the mechanism that divides up land, dedicates right-of-way, so roads and sidewalks and other public areas, and then creates the lots that buildings can be built on. Zoning establishes kind of the framework for what can be built on a lot, and that includes both the dimensions, the size, the location of the building, as well as the uses that are allowed on that building or in that building. There is a second step that once the zoning has been established and the plat has been approved and those lots have been created, when the developer then wants to actually build buildings there, it's determined whether those uses are permitted according to the zoning, or if they're what we call conditional uses. And those conditional uses require an additional approval from the Plan Commission. And then it's only after they get that conditional use approval, or if their use is approved as a permitted use by the zoning administrator, that they are then able to apply for building permits. And then that building permit process is the standard process for applying and receiving those building permits. So this is the area that we're talking about right now. This is the southwest corner of Mineral Point Road and Whitney Way in the far northeast side of the University Research Park. This aerial photo is a couple years old, so it doesn't even have Endeavor Lane on here, but there's the new Endeavor Lane that was platted and built as part of Exact Sciences project just to the south. And then you have Gardner Park up to the north. I'd also like to speak very quickly about what the city's adopted plans say about this area. So this map is from the city's comprehensive plan. This was adopted in 2018. This is called the Generalized Future Land Use Map. The comprehensive plan is the general plan for the entire city. It's a little bit more general than some specific neighborhood plans are, but at the moment, this is the only plan that takes this area into consideration. There are no adopted neighborhood plans for this area. So the area that is being proposed for development here is recommended for community mixed use. This is a relatively high intensity mix of various types of uses. So this could include residential, office, institutional, some retail and commercial, and is generally located along major transportation corridors, such as Mineral Point Road or Whitney Way. The general residential density is quite high here, up to 130 dwelling units per acre. And the types of buildings that we would expect to see are between 2 and 6 stories tall. I mentioned that this is not part of any adopted neighborhood plan. However, there is a plan currently in process called the Odana Area Plan. Some of you may be aware of this. The map on the screen right now shows the planning area for this. It's quite a large area. It might be the largest special area planning area that we have of any plan in the city. It stretches from Westtown all the way across Research Park to almost to Seago in some areas. So this process is currently being undergone right now. There is a link down at the bottom that you can go to the planning webpage and participate. You can see when there's upcoming meetings, ways for you to participate just on the website and online in a virtual format. And I can certainly email that out to anyone that wants that if you contact me after the meeting. So again, my name is Colin Punt with the Planning Division. My email is cpunt@cityofmadison.com. Please feel free to reach out to me after the meeting if you have additional questions. And with that, I'm going to stop my share and I am going to turn it over to Bob Monat, who is with Mandel Group. Bob, if you would like to share your screen now, you should be able to do so and you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Let me just click into this and get my share up and ready to go. And here it is. So, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you. That was a great introduction, and Madison has got a wonderful process in place to encourage neighborhood input and public input on development projects. We appreciate that. We, as a company, Mandel Group has been supportive of interaction and garnering of ideas from the community at large on all of our projects. And so, I'm glad that Madison has such a well-established process in that regard. Tonight we're going to go through a fair number of images, and so I'm going to try to move this along fairly quickly, which is generally not my style. So I will apologize if I get too long-winded. But we're gonna be talking about a project that is the first indication of a process that the University Research Park began a couple of years ago, when they realized that in order to maintain the performance of University Research Park as a place of employment, as a place of innovation, as a major taxpayer in the city of Madison, that it was going to need to evolve. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight with Element Collective is going to be about how this begins to realize some of the goals and objectives of University Research Park in helping it evolve into a 21st century workplace. The project itself is called Element Collective, so you'll see this EC logo a couple of times this evening. Let's just see here. There we go. So we're gonna organize the discussion around 4 different areas tonight. First of all, we're going to let our friends who represent University Research Park, Inc. describe their thought process behind this transformation of University Research Park, help explain to people that don't perhaps know all of the characteristics of the operation there, to understand how the research park works in concert with the University of Wisconsin to foster and build bridges for the transfer of thought-based technology from the campus to the private sector. We're going to provide for a development overview to help familiarize yourself with some of the components of the Project Element Collective. We're going to talk a little bit about city goals and city policy and how we feel this development aligns with those policies and goals. And then we're going to talk about the Development Element Collective as perhaps providing for the first time within University Research Park an opportunity to extend features and benefits to not only the businesses and employees within University Research Park, but also to the surrounding neighborhoods. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Oliver, who's the Managing Director of University Research Park. And I'm going to ask Aaron to take us through a few slides that provide for an overview of the trajectory of University Research Park since it began in the early 1980s. Aaron?
Well, thanks, Bob, and thanks everyone for being with us tonight. We really appreciate the great turnout. I used to work for the city of Madison, and getting 97 people at a neighborhood meeting is a great feat. So thank you for your interest. I also want to mention that some of my colleagues are on the phone call tonight. Paul Minch and Quinn Perky are on the call. They'll be the lead developers for the research park part of this project. And my colleagues, Matt McConnell and Grace Moss, I also spotted in the participant list here to hear what the neighborhood has to say. We're also joined by a couple of trustees from the University Research Park. I saw Susan Lubar and Lori Benson. So thank you for joining us as well. And if there's anyone else, I apologize for missing you. The University Research Park, for those of you who don't know exactly what we are a nonprofit corporation, and we are affiliated with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We're dedicated to supporting and benefiting the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And what that means is we do things to try to help them translate their research into ideas and into products that make a difference in people's lives in the great spirit of the Wisconsin idea. I like to think of us as the Wisconsin idea in action. And to the extent that we can make a few dollars doing it, we send it back to the university so they can reinvest in education and research and doing all the important work that the university does. We started off as a research farm in 1984 to about 250 acres, but over time, Research Park developed that land once the university realized that the city was growing up around us. And so today we're home of one of the fastest growing technology clusters in the country and have a special focus on life sciences because of our affiliation and orientation to the university. Next slide, please. This chart kind of shows the growth over time. We've grown now, you can kind of see we plateaued for a period of time, and now we're ticking up again. Today there's about 4,100 people. We're currently trying to count them as I speak with a survey, and about 126 companies, high average salaries with great benefits, and a lot of spending that benefits the Wisconsin economy. We've got all kinds of different companies, from big companies that you see in the news all the time, like Exact Sciences or Illumina, university operations, but also a lot of small startups, rising stars and up and comers, people like Invenra or Stratitech, which are Stratitech's about to launch a product into the market right now to treat wound victims. So there's a huge community of people doing important work, and they represent some of the fastest growing employers in the region. Next slide, please. Exact Science is a good example of the kind of company that lives in Research Park. And it's also a good example of the kind of direction that we're trying to set. This is a picture of the new headquarters that we built for Exact Sciences up on Endeavor Lane, the new street that Colin was mentioning. And it sort of shows the path that Research Park is trying to evolve onto. A number of years ago, we updated our covenants to allow this evolution. And I'm going to tell you why we thought that was important in a minute. But I want to point out some of the physical differences. You'll see that this building's pulled up to the street. It doesn't have such a big setback. There's some real attention to placemaking and streetscape. You'll see another slide on that down the road. And I think an elevation in the architectural design features of Research Park. So we're trying to evolve in a way that will really set a new standard for development in the park. Next slide, please. And we're really doing this with a number of goals in mind. First and foremost, we want to continue to be a major cluster for life sciences and make sure that we keep the park strong. Today, I'm really happy to say we're at about 98% occupancy. We're almost totally full. And although we've had some office tenants that have been affected by the pandemic, a lot of our life science companies are pretty strong. It's hard to do your wet lab work in your basement. And so we really feel the demand from our tenants who want to continue to grow and continue their cutting edge work. And it's important work. We have 6 companies alone that have, at least 6 companies that have already pivoted and are working on COVID-19 related work. And they need more space to kind of push these projects forward. So our first goal is to make sure that we're providing enough lab space for our companies to continue to grow. Second, we also want to better serve these companies. We know from surveying them, and Bob's going to talk a little bit about that the environment they're in trying to attract talent and keep their talent and make them productive has kind of changed. They need to add amenities and integrate the work lives and the personal lives of their employees more. They need live, work, play kinds of environments in order to get the talent that they need to do this work. And they want this kind of more dynamic environment that has coffee shops or fitness offerings or walk to work living opportunities nearby. And we think giving them these kinds of opportunities right in the park will not only make the park stickier and more successful, but we also think it'll actually make it more innovative. When you've got these sort of restaurants and coffee shops, places like that, you run into people you haven't seen, you exchange business ideas, you get a deal done over lunch. Maybe you have a problem and you strike up a random conversation with a scientist and all of a sudden you're running down a new path. So we think we can actually build the community at Research Park, and the result will be more innovation, more partnerships, and even more new businesses. Third, we want to be good citizens. When we were planning Research Park 2, one city staffer, I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to. One city staffer told me, well, don't make the same mistakes at Research Park 2 that you made at Research Park 1. Well, what they meant by that is that we have used a lot of our land for wide setbacks and for that people look at, but they can't really use. It's not usable green space. And asphalt parking lots. 20% of our land is turned over to asphalt parking lots. And so we want to make sure we're managing our stormwater in a way that really sets a standard for Madison and meets the standards. We want to make sure we're supporting transit opportunities and reinforcing the city's goals of developing BRT. We want to make sure that as we create these live, work, play environments, we're adding the housing that the city needs and wants as compact and efficient with land as possible. And we're trying to open up the park and make it a more inclusive environment. And so as you'll hear later on, we're really targeting and trying to support some of the goals that Mayor Rhodes Conway has set for the city. And finally, we want to be good neighbors. As URP evolves going forward, we want to mesh with the neighborhoods around us and really open ourselves up and invite the neighborhood in. So we're doing this in part for the community and in part for the community at Research Park, but we also hope that you'll get excited about this project as you hear more about it, and that you'll really come to see it as part of the neighborhood's living room. And we invite you to come over and enjoy it, walk your dog, get a cup of coffee, have a meal, join the gym, whatever way makes sense for you. We hope that you'll come to see Research Park as important and vital part of the community. So thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to your feedback.
Thank you, Aaron. That was a great summary. And I'll tell you, I have a personal history at the research park. I actually was in one of the first buildings built there. I was employed by Wardszine Engineering back in the late 1980s. And I recall when Research Park was first starting, and the building that I occupied is still there today, but boy, has the landscape changed. And the profile of the companies that have been attracted there is really something that a lot of research parks around the country would envy.
I don't want to date you, Bob, but that was the first building in the park.
Yeah, well, it wasn't my doing. I just happened to work there. So this, you've seen a couple of images already to help orient you to the location. I point out here that in some of our initial planning, you'll see a 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile radius drawn off the project. And the reason why those are on this particular image we pulled up is because one of the first things we began thinking about was the walkability and bike distances, so that we began to understand what it would mean for someone from Illumina or some of these outlying companies. How would they come to enjoy Element Collective, and what kind of distance did they have to overcome? But everything that we've been thinking about is pedestrian scaled, and is intended to set a new design standard within the research park. Here's another image, an aerial image that outlines the parcel. It's a little contracted in the vertical, so the parcel looks a little different shape. In the foreground, you see the Slipstream property that is along Whitney Way. Slipstream, you may be aware, is a company that works in energy conservation, alternative energy, things like renewables, and has their fingerprints on the Focus on Energy program in the state of Wisconsin, which we collaborate with a lot in terms of energy conservation within our buildings. Over to the left here is a building that is also occupied by Exact Sciences. In the bottom of the image, you see a little bit of the construction that was ongoing at the time that roughed in what is now Endeavor Lane that intersects at Whitney Way. This is an image that shows an architectural representation that shows the massing of the proposed buildings and identifies the uses within those proposed buildings. The dashed yellow outline shows the extent of the Element Collective project boundary. The yellow building up at the top of the screen is proposed to be 179 apartments. Below that is located a 3-level parking deck. So Aaron alluded to the amount of land area that was dedicated to surface parking, which you can see in the 3 buildings that surround us here. But in our development, again, trying to set a new standard, all of the parking is intended to be on structured parking, and we also begin to introduce some on-street parking for the convenience of retail and food and beverage patrons. Next to the multifamily building to the east of it, you'll see a combination food hall and climbing gymnasium. We'll talk about those programs a little bit further. The University Research Park is proposing to develop a new office lab research building that's on the corner of Mineral Point Road and Whitney Way. It's surrounded by a stormwater detention pond that you'll see in better detail in just a moment. And then finally, toward the center of the property, we have a location reserved for a hotel, along with some additional food and beverage and retail space. The sequencing of the project would be that we will develop the portions of the project other than the hotel. We'll actually stage the construction off the location of where the hotel is right now. You may be aware that the hotel industry is very severely impacted by COVID-19. This hotel would not be scheduled to open until 2024, 2025. And so we think it was serendipity that our planning and worked out such that the hotel would be naturally delayed in the process. The food hall that we'll talk about a little in a little bit is a project that's conceived of as being a curation of local Madison food purveyors, both in terms of established players as well as startups and people that are just entering the food space with perhaps their first try. To give you a little bit better impression of the streetscape and of the feel of that rather sterile architectural drawing, this is one of the earlier renderings that we had our architects prepare for us to begin to explore the streetscape and some of the concepts of placemaking and pedestrian scale that we are hoping to accomplish within Element Collective. The scale of the streets, the incorporation of traffic calming measures, and all the other factors that that go into the detailed design are all intended to give this this place first a sense of place, but also a feel that is really contradictory to a lot of the automobile-oriented development that characterizes the west side of Madison. The west side, you know, I knew from having lived there for a number of years, the west side really grew substantially during the automotive era, obviously, and so a lot of the places where you're able to go and take your family out to dinner and the like, those places are all oriented to the automobile. Here, we're really looking back to a development pattern that's much more like a traditional neighborhood street. It's the kind of place that we think will be people that patronize it will find really welcoming, and people will enjoy coming back here because of the ambiance of it, as much as for the convenience, the quality of the food, and other reasons. As Aaron alluded to, we did undertake, before we started designing, and everybody was anxious to start designing a development, and we said, no. We're gonna spend a lot of money, and we're gonna do a very extensive survey within the research park and gain an understanding of what businesses and people that work at those businesses in the park, what they really are looking for. And so we had a survey that our consultant said was too long, asked too many questions. We had over 800 people answer all the way through the 35 or 40 questions on the survey out of those that we distributed. And then we brought some of those people back in for focus groups. And then we also did some one-on-one interviews with HR directors to understand what they thought they needed to attract talent, as well as C-suite corporate executives, to talk to them about the aspirations for their businesses, how they would grow, and how could we benefit them in terms of the types of things that we incorporate into Element Collective. So one of the first things we did is we talked about housing. As a real estate developer, our sweet spot is housing development, and in particular, housing development in mixed-use projects. So our mixed-use developments may include a pharmacy, a grocery store, a cafe, a coffee shop, a gymnasium. You'll see a climbing gym in a moment in one of our developments. But we like doing mixed use. And so when we began to look into housing, we were really encouraged by the factors that came out, the results that came out of the survey. 71% of our survey respondents said that they really had a desire to be able to walk to work. And maybe some of the current work from home sentiment is a reflection on this, but you know, working from home in July and August is different from working from home in February and March. So, we'll see how this whole thing plays out as we get further into it. But 71% said they really saw as it being very desirable to be able to walk to work. 75% identified this location within University Research Park as a desirable place to live within Madison. They really felt that this location had high desirability for any number of reasons. Clearly, they must like working at University Research Park, and they began to think, boy, if there was an ability to live here and be able to walk to work, just think of how much time that would free up for me and how much angst that would take out of my day from the time I invest in commuting. And then finally, when we looked at the household types, 29% of people, or over 1,200 people almost, that you know, extrapolated to the 4,200 employees, 1,200 people currently lived in apartments. So, you know, the people that responded to the survey were not all making $500,000 a year, owned a company and lived in, you know, in a subdivision on 5 acres out in the hinterland. A lot of people were living in apartments, and there it's clearly it's more than enough for the 179 apartments that we've identified here. And so we felt that there was a really good opportunity, a really strong market demand, would be a strong market demand for apartments, which would not be limited only to people that work in the research park, obviously, but clearly people that work in the research park would be the primary audience for the apartments that we would develop there. Another avenue that we pursued in our surveys had to do with the types of goods and services that they would find important. We queried them on 10 to 15 different types of services that we were interested in. One of which was health and fitness, and 79% of the respondents confirmed that a state-of-the-art fitness facility is either very or somewhat important to them at this location. You can imagine the number of people that have Orange Theory memberships or other types of memberships that they had been tied to or will be tied to. But you know, what we wanted to do, and the reason we wanted to incorporate health and fitness is because it's really a community building type of activity. The things that we want to be able to provide, for instance, our concept is to anchor this with a climbing and bouldering gymnasium as a primary activity. Those are not things that companies put into their fitness rooms. They put in treadmills and bikes and things like that. That's terrific. But a lot of people want to get out. They want to meet other people. They want to exercise in classes. And there's been such a run up in terms of the popularity of bouldering and climbing. We kind of got on that train 5 years ago when we signed a deal in Milwaukee with Adventure Rock. Their gymnasium that we built for them is shown on the left. It's an 18,000 square foot climbing gym and bouldering facility. At the time they built this, they only built about 3,500 square feet of bouldering. They just opened a new 14,000 square foot bouldering gym in the middle of the pandemic in another neighborhood in Milwaukee, because this gym was just literally overrun by demand. And so it's a activity that spans all the way from kids, you know, 3-4 years old, high school climbing teams, college kids obviously are all over it, young professionals, and older climbers as well. It is a multi-generational activity, and it is really, really popular. And so we've gotten tons of interest from people that work in the research park asking us, when's the climbing gym going to open? So fitness becomes a really important part of community building, and is attached directly to the food hall. So only to be outdone by food and beverage, which is obviously a basic necessity. Over 80% of people, 83% of the people that responded to our surveys indicated that it was very important to someone important for them to have food and beverage offerings. So they love the idea of a coffee shop with an internet cafe, which implies the ability to work outside the office with your laptop for an extended period of time. So it's that third space that they wanted outside of the office. Informal food hall with various food offerings. As I said, we've been in the process of beginning to curate and seek expressions of interest from restaurant, food and beverage operators in the Madison market. Now you can imagine that in the last few months, we haven't been pushing those conversations because obviously those people have got a lot of stuff on their minds. But we've talked to a number of downtown restaurants and others that aren't able to serve the West Side or don't have a West Side location. And so we're looking to mix some solid, proven performers with really high quality food, and then along with some interchangeable or short-term lease booths, and even some internal food carts where people on kind of the lowest, the lowest rung of the food chain. I hate to use the term, but on the lowest rung of the continuum, people that are just getting into the food and beverage industry. We want them to have a chance as well. And the city of Madison is very proactive in terms of their programs to support entrepreneurs in the food space. So the idea is to have this very interesting, continually evolving change of food vendors here, so that people that patronize Element Collective, be it in the park or people in the area, they can come in and they can find some of their own old reliables, as well as find brand new offerings on a weekly or monthly basis. We expect a lot of people to come here for lunch, and we think that in certainly in nice weather, the character of the space and the ability to collaborate with others in the park, you'll have a lot of meetups that happen as part of this food hall. But also, we expect a fairly robust delivery and takeout business that would help the vendors thrive in this kind of environment. That food hall, by the way, is going to be designed in a way so that it can also support activities that businesses identify to us. They're looking for a space outside of their offices where they can have events and receptions, employee appreciation events, investor pitches, or collaboration events with their vendors or their key suppliers. And so the food hall is being designed in a way that it'll be adaptable to those types of events. And it'll also be available for people, the general public, that if someone wants to have a family event, a reception, or an event here, the marketing director will be, will obviously book as many days as they can without interrupting the normal and customary operation of the food hall during normal business hours. On the rooftop of the food hall, we're planning on a rooftop bistro that'll have a limited food fare, but will be kind of a meetup place at the end of the day for people to go to have a different type of venue experience. There'll be indoor space as well as outdoor alfresco space, and it creates one of those kind of memorable spaces that people we believe will congregate to, and will create that destination effect for Element Collective, because it is unique. It's something, again, that you just don't see in outside of the downtown marketplace. Aaron, maybe I'll ask your team to talk a little bit about your thoughts on the research lab building on the corner of Whitney and Mineral Point.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Research Park is very full at the moment. We have a lot of lab companies that need to grow. And this is really, this corner of Mineral Point Road and Whitney Way is really the most visible corner, the marquee corner. It sort of points back towards the University of Wisconsin. So we thought it was really important that that corner be the place where we put our new lab building, that we can kind of create a new symbol for the park. We can sort of let the world see what Research Park does all day, which is help support companies that are working on groundbreaking science and technology. And so we are in the process right now of hiring an architect. This is a preliminary sketch that we did during the planning phase for this, but this is not the architecture yet. But it kind of is a nod to kind of creating a high quality beacon that will really symbolize what Research Park stands for, and create what I think will be a really memorable special building. We're hoping there will be a cafe or a coffee shop on the first floor right across from the food hall, and that there might be opportunities to gather kind of in and around this building. It'll be framed with, I think, very well landscaped stormwater ponds that really create kind of a majestic first impression, like the corner does now, with this building in the background, and this landscape and these stormwater ponds really framing the foreground as they do today. And it'll provide much needed space for the lab companies to grow.
The final component that I mentioned earlier, the hotel in the center of the park, again, our survey, it drove the inclusion of this component. 75% of the respondents felt that this would be a great location, and they'd like to see us attract a really creative hotel. So they want something relatively unique and something that reflects well on the fact that we're within a research park versus on a highway or some intersection. And 53% of the companies that responded, so within that 75% same group, 53% said that they had frequent visitors from out of town that required hotel stays. So you can begin to understand how the research park drives certain aspects of the economy in Madison, and they bring in hotel guests that are either co-venturers or investors, business partners, lots of employees, employee and talent prospects that are brought into town. You know, if we had the ability to bring those people in and bring them into Element Collective, you can imagine some really unique opportunities they'd have to experience where they might be working. They could easily, you know, we'd give them access, for instance, to the climbing gym and tell them, hey, if you're a climber, bring your climbing gear, because that's part of the athletic or fitness offering of the hotel. They have a food hall right across the street. If it's a younger associate being considered, they'd say, oh, you know, I could rent one of those apartments right there. I could walk to work. How easy would this be? So we think a hotel at the appropriate time is going to be a really integral piece of the puzzle. But you know, as I said, that site, first of all, won't be available initially, and secondly, we wouldn't want to build a hotel right now just because of the afterburn of COVID-19 on the whole hospitality industry. We believe we'll have it timed such that we'll be in a very good place to start that in 2023, late 2023, early 2024, and it'll be at a time when where we can really attract the best in the industry to the research park. So we have a lot of lofty goals for the quality of the project, and we kind of threw out the rules book in terms of the architects that we normally work with, and we went really outside the market, either in Madison or Milwaukee, to find a best-in-class company in the U.S. that has exactly the type and qualitative experience that we were looking for, working in settings where you're inserting a mixed-use development in a high-end research park. The architect that we found that we're really excited to be working with is Triba Architects out of Denver, Colorado. The project in this image here is of the Google campus that they built, that they designed in Boulder, Colorado. We thought that it really embodied all of the sensitivity, attention to detail, integration with nature, walkability of their campus. It's everything that we could want, or a technology-based corporation could want. And so we're very excited to be able to work with Triba. I'm not going to oversell their credentials, because it'll just drive up my design fees if I do it any further. So, but I would encourage you to visit their website, because they really do. They have a phenomenal body of work. David Triba, the principal of the firm, is directly involved in the project, as are his key personnel. So sometimes you get a great firm and not so great people. I think we hit the jackpot with these guys, and we're really having a lot of fun working with them on this development. So that brings us to reflect on some of the city's goals, because the city of Madison has a very detailed process, and it has some very specific ideas of the way they want to see development happen within the city, which is natural. I mean, Madison is a very environmentally sensitive setting. It's you know, the isthmus, the three lakes, the three primary lakes, and the quality of water issues, the footprint that the city places on the landscape, and the pressures that you've seen happen in the last several years as Madison's growth has just outpaced every other city in the Midwest except for Nashville, Tennessee. It's the only city in the Midwest that has outpaced Madison in terms of pace of growth. And but you'll if you don't do this the right way, you're going to end up with a metro area where you have too much leapfrogging and too much development that is reliant on automotive travel. So, what the city of Madison has done is they've created this series of policies that are intended to provide for densified development, more sustainable development patterns that and allow for people to tread more lightly on the landscape as the city grows. So the five policies that you'll be hearing some about in the following slides: sustainable design and construction policies. You may have recalled that we previously mentioned.
Hey, Robert, I apologize to interrupt you. I'm hoping, we do have a lot of people here, and I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of questions. And so I don't know how many more slides you have.
We'll go through. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I mean, these we'll just keep going. We'll move this through. Okay, Alder.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Move it through. So here are the 5 policies that we looked at. The intent is that the project becomes a welcoming presence not only to people within the research park, but for residents from the surrounding neighborhoods. One of the key benefits that will be occurring as the research park evolves is a further extension and expansion of the walking trails and pedestrian accessibility. This image happens to be of one part of the pedestrian network that is incorporated into the Exact Sciences headquarters building. So this will be extended further south, which is the direction you're looking, and then we'll extend north up into the Element Collective development. But so even in the development and construction that's happening today, the idea of pedestrian accessibility through the park and bicycle accessibility is being thought of. As far as traffic and cars are still with us. They will be for a long time, but the City of Madison Traffic Engineering Department shows that only 20% of the traffic that is originated by the research park is approaching from the east and the north, and most of the traffic connects back down to Whitney Way, and then a pretty good chunk comes from the commercial areas to the west of us. So the traffic that is coming into the park is distributed as shown in the graphic here. We mentioned that we had 2 road interconnections on Mineral Point Road and Whitney Way. These are right in, right out movements. What we've done is we've shown the highest peak hour AM or PM traffic count that has been projected by our traffic engineers, and the highest peak hour movements to the south on Whitney Way shows the continued dominance of that pattern with respect to traffic coming and leaving. Obviously, there'll be a lot of internal traffic that doesn't get counted on those roads. One of the other key benefits of this site is that it's right at the intersection of two main routes for the proposed BRT service, and there's a request on the part of city staff that we provide for a station either on Mineral Point Road or on Whitney Way. That's still being worked out, but we'll have that. We have that multimodal access, as well as the presence of the Madison Metro West Station, which is on Tokay on the south. As far as stormwater goes, a lot of the research park developed at a time when the city's standard was a 10-year storm event. And so what you see here in the corner is kind of the maximum profile of the pond on the corner right now, the dry pond on the corner. Our plan is going to expand on the amount and number of ponds. You can now begin to see the profile of this lab building and how it's surrounded by this cluster of stormwater ponds. And you can get a general feel for the expansion on the size of ponds, would be executed in conjunction with other stormwater strategies that are incorporated, green roofs and other small basins further upstream. We conducted a complete tree survey on the property. As happens on a lot of these sites that have never experienced any development, there are a number of invasive species that are being discussed right now with University Research Park and our arborist with regards to controlling invasive species. We have trees in poor condition, but we did identify 3 priority preserved trees in the survey along Mineral Point Road in the setback area. And we have our arborist has forecasted protective root diameter off the trees. And our building, which is already set back off of Mineral Point, but we will actually, to protect or to respect these protection areas, will actually notch the building. And that happens in the area where there's the climbing wall is of the gymnasium, the climbing gym, but that building can readily be notched around it and will create a really unique experience that shows deference to those priority trees. So here are the people that are on the call from our team this evening. I'm second from the bottom. If anyone wants to contact me by phone, please just email me your contact info and I'll send you all my direct phone lines so you can get a hold of me as the primary representative of the real estate developer. So with that, I will turn it back over, Colin, to you, and we look forward to your comments and your questions.
Yeah, Robert, can you go back in your presentation to that kind of overview, aerial view of the proposal? We'll just kind of leave that up for right now. I think that may be the best way to, or best thing to have, best visual to have. Thank you for that. And then, so as I mentioned, if you click the participants button at the lower center of your screen, on the participant list, at the bottom of the participant list, there should be an opportunity for you to raise your hand. And then I will see a little blue hand. I see that there is someone that has already raised their hand. So we're going to start with our first question or comment. It's Q Knopf, I believe.
Yeah, that's Q Knopf. Hi.
Okay.
So this is John and Q, and we live in the neighborhood. We also work in the research park. We think that you have a lot of really good ideas, and we generally are opposed. Like, we're kind of like the bananas, or the caves, the people opposed to absolutely any development. But we are somewhat convinced that this is an excellent idea. There's a couple things that you might need to kind of straighten out. Like, when our clients come, like our most valuable clients, they have no interest in staying in the west side of Madison. They all want to stay downtown. When people gather after work, they all kind of go to the Vintage and get a drink. And for lunch, we like food trucks because we just kind of walk up to the food truck, grab something, and take it back to the lab. We could never bring our computers out of the work that we do and be in the public domain because things are confidential and proprietary. But your ideas are pretty awesome. So your general idea is pretty good. So what I really wanted to say is Westgate Mall failed. Westgate Mall was a similar kind of concept and it failed. And right now they're trying to go into development. And we are extraordinarily opposed to the Westgate Mall development, but much more open to this development. And so my question is, how are you going to compete with the Westgate Mall development? And is there anything that your development could do that could help us to oppose the Westgate Mall development, in the sense, like, if there's a limited number of licenses or anything, we would bring the neighborhood together to make this development happen if we could potentially block the terrible development that Hy-Vee's planning in Westgate Mall. We're could pro, I don't know.
Well, first of all, I appreciate all your comments, and I do realize that there is a lot of proprietary work going on within the research park where there are some companies that just don't want you to know what they're doing, right? I mean, and you might be working at one of those companies. But the Westgate Mall project, you know, you really have got to understand, I think, the dynamics of a location, and you can't change the color of a site just because you want to do something new on it. There's so many characteristics of a site like that that are just inherent in the location, the surroundings, the character, the traffic counts, the supportive, you know, the supportive or non-supportive nature of the environs around the project, that that will influence its ability to succeed in transformation or not. And this would be, I'm not going to oppose or even comment on Westgate Mall. It would be disingenuous. It'd be the pot calling the kettle black. And but I feel that maybe one way to answer your question is that I feel that there is a proven and demonstrated need for this project. It provides a unique set of attributes and conditions that you just simply can't replicate out on a freeway interchange or a highway type setting. It's completely different.
Yeah, we actually, that answered our question perfectly. You put that in, thank you for that. Is actually a very, very nice answer. The location, what you're doing makes perfect sense. But you know where we stand. We'll help you if you help us.
Let me add one thing to that, if I could, though, you know, because I appreciate the question. One of the things I hope you'll take away from the presentation tonight is that this is not a cookie cutter development. There are easier ways to, you know, do a simple kind of cookie cutter project that makes a bunch of bucks for some out of town investor. And this is not that project. We're really trying to create something that has very high quality, is really sensitive to context, that really creates a place. And we're trying to create a little gem. And one of the things that I hope that will do is inspire other people to kind of raise the bar on their own development. So I don't know if we can, you know, I don't want to comment on Westgate, but I hope that this project will raise the bar for the other development sites around us.
That's what it seems like it's doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
We are going to go to Beverly Resch now. Beverly, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
I don't think I'm not muted. Okay. I'm not unmuted. I'm muted, okay, or not?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I am a local resident, not an employee at Research Park, but I've been here about 20 years. And not only Westgate, but we have multiple other apartment buildings being built up to the sidewalk, which seems to be the current, you know, plan for Madison. And there's going to be, you know, the gym and all these things will affect multiple other local businesses in our area, restaurants, gyms, you know, places that people gather. And one thing that irritates me a lot is that we have a transportation station here in which there is no parking for people to be able to come and then use transportation to go downtown. Since COPS was closed, they are using the COPS parking lot, but as soon as something else goes in there, it'll be, you know, you will be ticketed and towed if you happen to park there. But if we want people to use transportation from outlying areas, we have to provide parking, and it just doesn't make any sense that there's no parking. It will have an effect. And looking at these schemes, we have a lot of bikers in Madison, a lot of bikers in the area, and I don't see bike paths on here. So you want people to use transportation, but Research Park, like you said, is 250 acres. Well, that's not, you can't walk from one end to the other easily. So there are no bike paths where people can use that kind of transportation once they get there. So those are my concerns.
So I'm going to jump in about the park and ride for transit. It's certainly not the responsibility of this development to provide park and ride for Metro Transit. That's something that the city continues to look into and try to figure out what works best for that. We can certainly talk about that more If you want to shoot me a note, I'm happy to talk to you about that. That's incredibly complicated because it's incredibly expensive. One, to provide metro service. It's very subsidized by the city of Madison. Two, park and rides then have to be subsidized as well by the city of Madison. And so the idea that people from out of town would drive in and park in those park and rides, we'd have to figure out how to actually afford that kind of amenity. But that's certainly not the responsibility of this developer to do that. I'm going to let them talk about bike lanes. So Bob, if you want to address that, I see you pulled up your slide.
Yeah. So this, I'll go back to the other slide in a moment, but the we're definitely planning for a fully integrated network of bike lanes on every street within the research park. Included in that, so those are shown in purple here. Included in that will be some multimodal pathways that will be both bike and pedestrian. You see those in kind of the chartreuse color that crosses the site. The portion that is at Endeavor Way at Innovation 1, that's the picture that we showed as part of the bikeway, so that if you're coming in on Research Park Boulevard, you turn right and you go down this dedicated bikeway right into the project. We've talked to preliminary conversations with B-Cycle to try to expand the bike share system through the park. E-bikes have been a real game changer in terms of using them for commuting or short haul, like for instance, within the research park. There's a lot of distance between some of these employers and our development, and so we see a lot of people being able to bike there during decent weather, and e-bikes, as you well know, from the statistics, just expand on that. We've gone so far as we recently bought a couple of motorbike scooters, not scooters, but literally motorbike scooters that work off of smartphone technology that, we could buy 20 of those electric scooters for the price of building one parking stall for a car. And so the idea of having self-serve multimodal opportunities for businesses throughout the research park, maybe $40,000 a parking stall to build structured parking, it's expensive. And so we're going to do everything we can to get people to arrive here without having to drive in a car. And so there's a lot that we didn't cover here due to the shortage of time, but if you want to send me your contact information, Beverly, I'd be glad to email you some additional information on it. I'm a huge bike proponent. I'm a huge supporter of Wisconsin Bike Federation, and it's near and dear to my heart. So we would not do a development without accommodations for bicyclists.
Before we take the next question, I did want to at least point out that I will be posting a copy of tonight's slides to my blog, and I will have Alder Hennick and Alder Martin posted to theirs as well. So you'll be able to get all the contact information if you didn't get that already.
All right, we are going to move on to Deborah Ziegers now. Oh, sorry, Deborah, I may have remuted you. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I live within a mile, and I am somebody who is likely to want to walk to the area and enjoy some of the amenities. I heard a lot of things that I liked, the integration with nature, the pedestrian friendly aspect, the hiring a great architect firm, and what I didn't hear, and what I hope the city will consider asking all new developers to do, is to install public art in all of these spaces, and also if require a certain amount of electric car stations. I guess I'm not sure how to say that, but if there's any parking at all, I think there should be some accommodation for electric vehicles, because we need to start moving in that direction. So were there plans for public art?
Yes. Aaron, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I love the idea of public art, and I think that could be a really cool element to the placemaking. So I oftentimes daydream about that, and we'll see how much it is. We've also talked to Tony Sykes' firm, which helps developers find custom made or commission custom made pieces of art. So I think that's a really cool idea. And I think it could be a neat thing to do in different places in the research park. So you could almost, have another reason to walk around the park and sort of enjoy all the natural prairies and the landscape that is usable. In terms of electric vehicles, I know the city's actually looking at regulations in this right now, but there are all of the new developments in the research park. The newer buildings have electrical vehicle charging stations. So if you go up to the Illumina building, they have them. The Exact Science headquarters that we just finished has them. And in fact, they have them in their visitor stalls. So if you're looking for a place to charge your vehicle, you can go park in front of Exact Sciences.
Yeah, I will just note that the Plan Commission at its last meeting or the meeting before did recommend approval of an ordinance regarding electrical vehicle charging stalls in parking structures to the Common Council. I do not believe the Common Council has acted on that yet, but it should be coming up.
Right.
Very soon.
And as far as our developments go that we build for our residences, we're somewhere right now between 5 to 10% of our stalls are outfitted with electric vehicle charging stations. The projection is that by 2030 or 2040, we'll be at least at 20% of those stalls. So one of the things that we're talking to Slipstream about is we're talking about a solar panel installation for common area electric service. And God knows if we got that many electric cars that we're charging, meters are going to be spinning, and it really puts a demand on the electric service size of a facility like this. So we're going to be looking for ways to accommodate strategies like electric vehicle charging stations with like strategies or complementary strategies like solar power on the rooftops of some of these buildings. Which direction, Deborah, would you walk from to get here?
West.
From the west?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things that we showed in one of these images that maybe we didn't, now I can't find the image, of course, but one of the things that we recognize is that there are a lot of these intersections, these pedestrian crossings on Mineral Point Road and Whitney Way are just, they're about as tough as they get right now. And so, so one of the strategies that we had was to try to create a crossing, at least inner park, between east and west sides of the park to further develop the Endeavor intersection for pedestrians. But it's very challenging to get across Mineral Point and Whitney and feel comfortable about it. And I've walked and biked that whole area, and it's just got to be made better. I'm not sure what all the answers are, but if you're coming from the west, crossing at Rose, will be a lot better than trying to cross at Whitney and Mineral Point Road, which are really there's so many dedicated turn lanes. The pavement gets so wide, it becomes a really tough intersection.
All right, we're going to have to continue to go on. So next is Dareth Wyman. Dareth, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
Yes. I have a question about the maximum height of the buildings. I really appreciate one of the aspects of Madison that is looking out over a very treed city rather than looking from one tall building to the next. And my second question is perhaps a little premature. It's about the hotel and extent of ADA accessible rooms.
Robert, Bob, can you answer the hotel question really quickly?
Yeah, the answer is yes. There's ADA accessibility required by law. So there will be rooms that are available. There are living units in the apartments that are accessible as well. And we will typically add on things like automatic doors where they're not even required, but we'll put them on anyway. Because we do have a fair number of people that are mobility impaired that live with us in our properties. As far as the height of the building goes, I believe that we're at or under the 6-story limit that was previously mentioned in some of the earlier slides. I would note that the buildings step down into the grade as this property drops towards the intersection. And so, so it would be, you couldn't, for instance, compare the height of the multifamily to the height of the First Business Bank Financial Center that's due west of us, because we're down gradient from that property. But I think 6 stories would be, is our maximum exposure. And as you saw in that one early rendering, the center of the property has this much lower scale platform or program where the food hall and the gymnasium are.
Thank you.
All right, we'll continue on to Benedict Fritz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks for the presentation. It's really excited about this project. So one question I had was, what are the thoughts around the hours of the amenities? So I know that in some areas where there are kind of businesses and restaurants and amenities built to serve a working population, the hours are often kind of centered around working hours, so kind of weekday hours, and then on the weekend everything is kind of closed and not really accessible to the neighborhood. So I was curious what the thoughts and kind of plans around the hours of the amenities are, if it will be kind of weekday centric or if it will be a space that operates through the weekend.
The feasibility of the commercial uses requires that we are that we attract and we cater to a 7-day-a-week patronage. So so as you correctly point out, Benedict, the clientele within the research park, they're primarily going to be there Monday through Friday, normal business hours, but then there are going to be things happening earlier and later. So there might be some early workouts, people that are coming into the gymnasium for an early workout, picking up some food to go for breakfast and getting to their place of employment by 8 or 8:30 in the morning. The climbing gymnasium, and this, we've been operating a climbing gymnasium in Milwaukee for 3.5 years now. So we have a feel for the ebb and flow of that business. That is an evening and weekend business. And I will tell you, the number of people that come there, evenings and weekends, it's really pretty stunning how big the climbing community is. And we've talked with the operator of Boulders in Madison, and gotten a feel for his hours of his peak hours and the like. So I expect that all of the commercial uses are going to be, 7 days a week, are going to operate like a normal, like a normal business that is catering, has the benefit of having 4,200 people right outside the front door, but also for purposes of their profitability, their feasibility, they're going to need to do a lot to attract folks from the neighborhood and nearby. And so they're gonna want to be open for hours that are convenient for families in the neighborhood or people that live in the neighborhood and want to get a workout in or climb on the weekends or on a Saturday night or something. It's going to be it's not going to be crazy hours where it's going to be open till like 2 or 3 in the morning or something, but it's going to be we're hoping to drive a normal and customary pattern of traffic throughout the day and throughout the weekend.
Great, thank you.
All right. Next is Eric with no last name. Is there an Eric that has no last name out there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my last name is Cabot, C-A-B-O-T. Sorry I didn't adjust that for this meeting because I do a lot of the Zooms and I do first name only. So generally speaking, I like the idea and the concept of this development, but one thing that really, really bothers me is I don't get the residential part. You know, I live in this area. I've lived here for over 20 years in Odana Hills, so other side of Odana Road. And I worked 2 different companies in the research park. I never heard anybody express anything along the lines of, oh, I'd love to live near work. You can't wait to get out of there. You don't look at you don't look at the roads, you get in your car, you go. You're going home from work, and while you're working there, you never look outside the building. You're focused on your work because the work is so interesting. These are high-tech people, they're driven by the work. Okay, end of that. But the thing is, it would make a lot more sense to have residential where it was more of an extended stay concept, where, okay, so you got a company, you're getting some consultant from face it, most of the technology companies are a lot of pressure or are joined to some other entity on a coast. So you're getting somebody in from the coast, whichever coast you like, and they want somebody to stay for 3 months while they're doing a project. Then they go back to the home office in San Diego. Or in the case of Illumina, I guess it's north of San Diego. So, you know, it just seems to be that would be a much more reasonable fit for the research park. I don't see this as a place where, oh, I'm going to go live there in an industrial park on the edge of it. You're not really part of it. You're kind of on the edge. It doesn't make any sense. So could you address for me what the real rationale for having 182 multifamily units in this setting? What's
Sure.
the rationale there?
Sure. Well, I appreciate your comment, and there's it's you know, part of our thinking is driven by the survey results of the people that we talk to within the research park itself. And I can, you know, I mean, I never really, you know, I'm 63, so I never really wanted to live on top of my job. But then again, I never worked, you know, when I worked in the research park, I lived over on Old Middleton Road. Okay, so I could bike, I could drive, and that was fine. You know, back in the 80s, that was fine. Here, when you develop something that has, you know, a lot of amenities and a lot of diversions for someone that would live there, you know, for some people, younger people, you know, there are a lot of younger people I know these days. They don't own a car. A lot of them don't have driver's licenses. They don't want, you know, if they could live here and be not in the middle of an office park, but in the middle of an area that's specifically designed around a lifestyle option, you might be surprised, you might not, but there are tons of people that are going to, you know, that are going to want to live in a setting that is as unique as this, as compared to living at the end of an umbilical cord out in a cornfield somewhere, which is where a lot of the other apartments are being built.
If I may,
Yeah.
So one example might be Epic. So we see this huge development on East Washington of all the Epic employees. Why aren't they living in high rises out at Epic? They're close to their work.
Well, I don't know how much there is. I mean, I love Verona. You know, I like all the communities around Madison.
But you're an old guy like me, of course.
But it's like, you know, is living in downtown Verona where there's a little bit of something else going on.
I can actually answer that
okay,
too, though.
Aaron's gonna bail me out here, okay?
You're doing fine, Bob. But you know, Epic took a totally different strategy than the strategy we're taking. You know, they bought 1,000 acres and they don't open any of it up for outside development. So they have basically a single user office park with 1,000 acres, but there's no restaurants except for the cafeterias there. And they deliberately want to push all the private sector non-Epic uses out to the fringes of Epic. So there's nothing walkable to Epic to live in. So you're going to get in your car or get on your bike to go, even if you live in Verona. And so I think a lot of those workers, they want to live somewhere where there's a there. And, you know, we hope this place will have a there. And, you know, when I was 16, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license, but I know a lot of the data is showing that there's fewer and fewer people, the percentage of people without licenses is actually growing. And I see there's a comment from Eric or from Q that says he onboards 4,000 new employees over the last 5 years, and they love apartments near work. So I think this is a sign where the demographics trends are changing a little bit, and we're trying to get ahead of that curve. I also want to, I'm watching the chat here, and I see there's another, besides Q's comment, there's a comment here from an 8th grader about the natural elements, and he's encouraging prairie plantings. One of the things that I have really come to love about Research Park, and I want to make sure we don't skip his question because he might be skipping his homework to be with us tonight. So I want to make sure we address that. But I love the prairies at Research Park. Not only do they help us manage a lot of stormwater in a really pleasing way, but we've actually been putting more and more prairie plantings in where we can, because they also help with pollinators. They create a habitat for a lot of wildlife. And it's great fun working in the Research Park, seeing all the wildlife. And one of the types of wildlife that you don't see as much, but we know is there, are the pollinators. And we've actually tried to encourage that by putting in 4 beehives. This year we made 600 pounds of honey right in the Research Park because of the native prairies. And I think that we have a great opportunity with some of the landscaping that we're incorporating, not only to kind of continue some of these natural prairie elements, which my colleagues are huge fans of, but also to add tree canopy in. So I see N. Winters, Shalleck is promoting that, and I just wanted to make sure we got a chance to address that.
Okay, so we still have a lot of people with their hands up, so we're going to keep going. Next is Ingo Bench. Looks like you're unmuted. You should be able to ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It sounds to me like the team has done its homework and you're doing what's right for the Research Park. So my comment is really more addressed to the city planners and city alderwomen, and that is, please think about what any development in the Research Park does to the neighboring neighborhoods. I live a block and a half just off the Research Park downwind and in Midvale Heights. And a lot of lab space has gone in. And I can now, from the room that I'm in, I can hear the exhaust fans from the labs that are nearby. If there were light outside, I'd be able to see some of the exhaust smokestacks. And sometimes I wonder what goes up into the air just upwind from me. And I heard that one of the purposes of putting in this development is to help the Research Park grow and grow toward more lab space. So I'd ask you to think about what's the long-term plan and where will that lab space go and what will that do to the nature of the neighborhoods that are already on some sides of the Research Park. That's my comment. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Ingo. We will continue on to Kerwin Vincent. I don't know if that may be a last name first, a Vincent Kerwin.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Yes. So I guess my question would be more for the Research Park Inc. representative. Was there someone there that was representing Research Park Inc.?
Yeah, there's several of us from the Research Park, but I'm the managing director, so I'm happy to grab it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so my question was that it seems like you're mentioning that you're making a transition to a more pedestrian type atmosphere for Research Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you had a policy already. I mean, it seems that there's a policy to leave the park as a prairie, you know, undeveloped parts of the park as a prairie or like a habitat for pollinators, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Hello?
So, yeah, is there a question that you wanted to ask about it? Or is
Yeah,
it
no, my question was whether you knew that like a lot of that park is used as for pedestrian space for people to walk their dogs and stuff now.
Yeah.
It's used that way. And I was wondering if there was like a commitment or if there could be a commitment to try to preserve some of that area.
Yeah,
No.
for sure. And right now, I mean, I think there's two things that are embedded in that question. One is Research Park has a lot of really lovely prairies that are supporting a lot of wildlife habitat, birds, insects, the pollinators I mentioned, and so forth. And they're also, a lot of those areas are stormwater areas. So our long-term plan is to preserve the prairies. They'll continue, they won't become development sites. The prairie areas of the research park will continue to be preserved as open space and as natural prairie elements. And places that can help make sure that we're capturing and treating our stormwater on site instead of, letting it run into other people's yards. So that's an important principle we're making. We're also trying to make the park more walkable. So if you've been in it lately, you might have seen some of our sidewalk projects. We put in new lengths of sidewalk to encourage people to walk around the park more. We put in several islands at different places to make it easier to cross the street, so pedestrians have a place to shelter if they can't get all the way across the street. And you'll see if you go down Science Drive or Rose Road, there's several new islands we put in and crossings. And that's something we hope to continue. One of our disconnects in that right now is some of the prairies you can see from windows, but they're hard to actually walk in. So we're actually looking at bringing a designer on board to see if there's some way that we can actually make some of those prairie areas a little bit more usable by creating some kind of walking path, maybe even a boardwalk. We're going to study it this year and try to figure out not only how we can get people to this development from all over the park, but how we can make the park a more walkable place in general. I should also say, Bob sort of alluded to this, but the multi-use path, the pedestrian and bike path that we started down by Exact Science, there's a plan to kind of continue to run it up. And I saw a question about shared streets before, so I wanted to point this out explicitly, that this is actually a separate path. It's not just a bike lane on the street where you're going to get smacked when somebody opens their car door. This is actually a path that's distinct from the road, and it's wide so that you have plenty of room to either bike or walk on it without running somebody over. So your question is like spot on, and you're hitting on exactly what we're trying to do in terms of walkability and prairie preservation.
Hey, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just also had a question about Illumina. I walk my dog around the area across from CUNA Mutual there, and there's like a retention pond next to Illumina, like you're talking about, for stormwater, I believe. And it seems like it wasn't very well planned out, and it seems to just kind of spill into like a road and into just a normal area that all I'm saying is that, is there a way that we can somehow guarantee, because also that retention pond that you're showing on the corner there, I've never seen any water in there ever. So I'm just thinking, like, is there a way we can make sure that this is like actually a functioning sort of, if it's a wetland type area or if it's supposed to represent some natural landscape, we can make sure that it actually functions like it's supposed to?
Yeah, that pond does function like it's supposed to currently. So we'll be designing these ponds as we go forward, and I don't know exactly what that design will be like, but we certainly hope to make them a feature, and they'll also be raising the bar. The city has a new standard to plan for the 200-year event instead of the 10-year event. And so, we'll make sure we have enough capacity so that the intersection doesn't flood, at least from our property.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that, Kerwin, one of the team members we have is a company called Applied Ecological Services. They're down in Broadhead, Wisconsin. And we specifically, we've worked with them before on some natural landscaping on some of our development sites. But the sole purpose of having them on the team is that they are so tuned in to making civil engineering projects like stormwater ponds not look like civil engineering projects, and to make them look very natural and create habitats within them and the like. They are the best in the business in that regard. And if you look them up, you know, they've actually done a lot of work within the research park already, in terms of habitat management and recommendations for, you know, habitat restoration, for instance, when invasive species are removed. There's, as Aaron said, a lot of the best areas in the research, and you know, you obviously are through there with your dog, which is terrific, but some of the best areas in the research park and some of the most beautiful vistas you can't enjoy right now because they're in the backyards of buildings and you can't get to them. And so a lot of what we've been doing in a mobility study that we have underway in the research park is to figure out how the pedestrian network can be expanded, interconnected more, just more, it'd be more intensive in terms of options, but also to allow people to enjoy a lot of these natural areas that are, you just can't get to right now unless you violate, you know, someone's backyard, you know, you climb over a fence or around a parking lot or something. It isn't, you know, it's not conducive to enjoying the best parts of the university research park.
Can I just address a couple things in the chat too that I'm seeing?
We're going to try to get through everyone that's raised their hand first, and then if there's still time, we'll address the chat.
Okay.
All right. Next is Jack Weitzel.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So my name is Jack Weitzel. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the executive director of the Building Trades Council in South Central Wisconsin. My question is, I really appreciate the idea of using local things for your food vendors you were talking about earlier. And my question is, if your developers are going to work with construction managers and general contractors to make sure that local labor is also being used for constructing this project.
Are you specifically referencing union labor?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. And you're in a good spot based on the election, aren't you?
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, Jack, we do you know Dan Bukacek down in Milwaukee?
Yep.
Yeah, so Dan, we worked with Dan. We happen to be doing a project in the Milwaukee County Research Park right now that used to be based on a standard of prevailing wage, which was Milwaukee County's old standard. And of course, when the prevailing wage was lost, Dan was one of the key members of the Research Park Board, and so we worked with him to establish a union participation minimum on that project. You know, I would tell you, I mean, our history in terms of residential development, you know, and I know you probably know this, there's a lot of non-union participation in residential development. But a lot of this construction that we're looking at here is commercial and heavier commercial construction. So, you know, so we foresee, you know, it's very likely that we're going to be using union contractors, for instance, on all of the base infrastructure and the commercial components of the construction. And I mean, our companies, you know, the projects that I'm running right now in our company, I have, you know, where I have no obligation for union participation. Typically, you know, we're running probably 60 to 75% union. There are a few trades, you know, the finished trades are really challenging. But if you want to just email me and reach out, I'd be glad to talk to you about that and talk to you about our track record and the way that we would approach it. Maybe maybe stealing your thunder on, but union labor and union subcontractors are kind of the backbone of the most complex work on these projects. And we use union regularly on all of, we have a union fire protection contractor I use over and over again, union plumbers, union HVAC contractors, union concrete, union steel, union or non-union carpentry, it depends. You get to drywall and stuff, it gets, that's where the numbers are, there's a big spread, but I'd be glad to talk to you about that as in terms of goals and objectives that you have for projects in your marketplace, and would love to have that, be able to meet you and have that relationship.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely send you an email.
I'll just add, Jack, thanks for the invite to come speak with your group. I'm looking forward to that. And we just finished the Exact Science project, which was about a $60 million project we did with Findorf. And so I am sure Research Park will use a contractor, along the lines of Findorf. That's a signatory for our lab project, as well as we're likely to do the road project. And I'll also just point out that, we worked very hard to get small business enterprises that are registered with the city involved in the project as well, where there were opportunities for, to provide services to the project, not necessarily the stuff that the trades do for Findorf, but, cleaning and the like.
Awesome.
All right. Next, we have 3 people left that have questions, and if we can answer them quickly, maybe we can hit some of the chat. The next is Graham Martin.
Yeah, hi. I have a comment and a question. My wife and I live in the neighborhood. We live just a few blocks from the research park. I think there's a lot of people in the neighborhood that like to bike to work or around the neighborhood. Just kind of building on what was said about bike paths. One of the problems with the neighborhood is that there are no bike paths, and so you have to take city streets to get pretty much anywhere. And I've thought in the past that if you could figure out a way to run a bike path through Research Park that actually connects somewhere with the neighborhood and through the park, that could be a game changer for people in the neighborhood who want to get to the southwest bike path. So that was my comment. Now, my question, well, my wife and I like to walk around the neighborhood, walk around the research park, and we really appreciate the natural setting and the layout where you've got kind of large buildings that are set back and lots of green space and trees and animal habitat. And it seems to me that this project gets away from that a little bit, in that it's a number of large buildings that are kind of clustered together. And that's our concern. In addition to that, it's built on what I consider to be one of the nicest natural parts of the research park, which is right at the corner of Whitney Way and Mineral Point Road. And I would encourage anybody who's on the call to walk around in that area and just check it out. It's got some nice paths and trees and stuff. So the question is, why did you cite it here? It seems to me, if you look at the map that we're looking at, that further west along Mineral Point Road, there are some buildings that are kind of old and small and could probably be demolished. And there's also some space that's undeveloped. So why not put it somewhere there?
This actually goes back to a question that got asked earlier. The land that you're talking about that's farther west, some of that, the stuff that's developed where there's buildings, that old farmhouse, for example, is actually owned by the University of Wisconsin. So that's not actually part of the research park. There's also a area that is undeveloped that's owned by CUNA Mutual over there. So there's 2 large areas that are not part of technically part of the research park. And one of the reasons why we put it here is to we didn't want to just check the box on some of these things. We actually wanted them to be able to survive in the marketplace. I've been at Research Park about 6 years and have been talking about putting in a coffee shop for a long time. People say, why don't you just throw it in the lobby of one of your buildings and call it a day? So who cares if you have to subsidize it and it's only open Monday through Friday? And my point is, if you want to do it right, you have to put the retail at an intersection like Whitney Way and Mineral Point Road, where people can see it, where they can remember it's there, where the neighborhood can get to it, and where it can have some visibility. So this site emerged, one, because it's right on that corner. Two, it's the last undeveloped site in the research park. If you remember that graphic, you could see that there's a site there that that was just empty. So although there are some paths in this area that we're going to change the character of that a little bit. Right now, a lot of them are, they feel wooded. There are actually a lot of invasive species there that are growing that are providing that. But we want to make the development thrive where it can. We want to use structured parking to kind of hide the cars and give the land back to the prairies and to the to people to walk on. We want to carve up some of these big suburban style super blocks into more of a grid system so that you're actually encouraged to walk. And we want to kind of reclaim some of our landscape to, instead of just continuing to sprawl out, we're trying to concentrate it into one section of the park so that there's a little gem that attracts people, that people want to go to, and that once you get there, it feels like a place. It has some enclosure as well as a connection to nature, and that we can kind of create something very special and unique that's not urban and not downtown, but is also not a suburban office park.
Yep, I think that, that's exactly what our objective is in terms of considering the overall character of the pathway system. There are really nice pathways in parts of the park, and as you properly mentioned, there are some really nice pathways that are behind the so-called Stonehenge Pond that then lead in a couple of different directions. So we know what the objective is, and our goal is part of the overall interaction of between ourselves and University Research Park. It's to enhance the system in the park and to create those types of experiences where they don't currently exist. I would tell you that getting to the Southwest Bike Path is an objective of ours. We're trying to figure out a way to get there, and create a pathway through the park to connect. We do have a connection that comes out of the east side of the park right now and connects to a local street. I haven't looked at that issue for a while, but I know that Southwest Bike Path, it's a great resource, and it'd be great if we could figure out a way to make a safe and logical connection to it.
If I can make a suggestion, there is a green sort of some space along the eastern edge of the park. The trick, I think, is to get across Mineral Point Road. You were talking about how pedestrians can safely get across Mineral Point and Whitney Way, and maybe you could build in a bike crossing along with the pedestrian crossing, whatever you come up with.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Next is Mary Hastings.
Yes, so we've been listening to your presentation, and we actually were pleased with what we heard. I think there's two questions, and I almost think it's really more towards the Alder to be answering. And that is, I live north and down Whitney Way, and we have had horrendous flooding. And I know there's a watershed project, and I guess my concern is you're taking out an area that's a stormwater drain collection area, and just how much more water is going to come down Whitney Way and flood our street. Significant flooding, and I'm sure our Alder is very aware of how significant that flooding has been. And to have you change the landscape up at that corner makes me very concerned for what potential flooding may literally come down the street and affect us more. So that's one piece I really want to hear more about. And the second is you're adding more activity into the research park with traffic. And we already have an issue once you go north of Whitney or Mineral Point of significant speeding and traffic issues. How is the city planning to address that? Those are my big concerns. What you're planning on doing sounds wonderful and helpful for everyone, but those two pieces need to be addressed for the neighborhood more than the research park issue.
Well, I guess I could comment, Mary, on the stormwater issue. Most of the research park is built to the old city standard of a 10-year storm event. And then, you know, subsequently the city standard was increased to a 100-year storm event. And you know, I think I've lived through like 300 or 400-year events already.
Exactly.
So it's really kind of a misnomer. And then you guys got nailed, obviously, with a series of events that just totally overwhelmed the storm system. So in response to that, the city then adopted a 200-year event design standard, and this entire development is required to be designed in conformance with the new 200-year event. So so that will, you know, and that will also take into consideration some of these flows that come onto this property right now from some of the adjoining properties around it. So it's one of those kind of illogical combinations of there's going to be more development, but there's going to be better stormwater management because of the quantity of stormwater facilities that are built on the property. And so the ponds that you see on the screen right now have a fairly substantial capacity, well beyond what's out there right now.
And will the watershed project people be involved in reviewing this plan?
The city engineering division, which is in charge of that watershed project, is one of the reviewing agencies that does look at this project and all other development projects. And the city engineering division does do a stormwater review of all projects like this.
And then
I'll just go ahead and follow up and say, I mean, this project will not make things worse. This project will certainly help contribute, make things better, but this isn't also intended to be the solution for what the watershed study in the area is looking at. But you know, ultimately, if we are going to solve flooding, it is going to be through a combination of public and private partnerships. Mm-hmm. And so what they're doing with this project in University Research Park, as I said, will not make things worse. It will make things better, but there will certainly need to be other projects in the area to improve stormwater retention and mitigation.
And then how is the traffic piece? Because you're clearly going to have more traffic occurring, whether that be by bicycle, foot, or car. And I'm more worried about the car traffic increasing.
Well, we do. We do. The city requires us to provide a complete traffic impact analysis, and we kind of sped through that. But I think that if you said your home is north on Whitney Way or off of Whitney Way to the north.
Correct. About 2.5, 3 blocks, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So it's these are numbers provided by the city. So we simply accepted them from the traffic engineering staff to represent on the slide where people direction of travel to the research park. I think that just knowing the area, having lived there, Whitney Way and Mineral Point Road are really major arterial streets. And Whitney Way is such an important connector in that part of town. The amount of traffic additional traffic that we're going to generate, that would be through traffic for your neighborhood. It does not appear in our analysis to be that significant. But I knowing that Whitney Way right of way, there's certainly opportunities for consideration of traffic calming measures along that stretch. It's a very nice road to drive. It's has all that gentle sweeping curvature to it and everything. And some of that stuff encourages faster speeds of travel. And you just gotta, you can maintain the street as a through street, but you can also make it rebalance it a little bit more to help bicyclists and pedestrians alike.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more person with their hand up, David Hardell, and then we are closing in on 9 o'clock here. So David, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I think Mary has probably asked about the same question that I have, and it is with stormwater management as well. We were one of the victims of the flood 2 years ago, which I realize was a very, very unusual event. But my question more specifically is with the retention ponds and so forth. Are there, and do you know if there are actually storm sewer pipes that feed under Mineral Point and into the retention pond that is alongside of Garner Park?
Yes.
Or, yes.
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 I can't tell you the exact location and path, but that is the direction that that stormwater goes.
Yeah. So with that stormwater, I'm glad that you're addressing it, and it is of a great concern to us down here. We're one of the victims. We had 33 inches of water in our house, and we're just 2 blocks away from you at the corner of Burnett and Kenosha Road. And we just feel that, there's more and more construction going on, and we just feel that, we are concerned about stormwater runoff. And I know it's part of a bigger project as well. But it's been 2 years, and so far nothing's changed, except that there's more building going on to the south of us. So, we just mind.
Well, appreciate that, David, very much. I mean, I think it's unfair to say nothing has changed as far as what the city's efforts have been. I mean, the city has been working incredibly hard to analyze every inch essentially of these watersheds to understand the flow of water, so they could better design mitigation techniques. And as Bob pointed out, we've implemented fairly stringent, fairly strong new stormwater ordinance that, having supported it, I could tell you, I mean, there was certainly pushback from developers about the increased cost and the increased resources in doing that. But as I said earlier, I mean, we can't solve these problems easily overnight, and we can't solve these problems on our own. And so it is, I became older, and 2 weeks later, August 20th happened, 2018. And right. It was just absolutely devastating to see the impact on this area of that flooding. And the sad news is it's going to happen again. And so we, the city very much recognizes that we need to do everything we can to mitigate this. But these are all really complicated, big projects. And I'm very appreciative to hear the work that this project is going to contribute in making it better. But this certainly isn't the end, and we are investing as a city a ton of time and resources. Of course, I wish we could invest even more and move even quicker. But everybody really understands what happened on August 20th and the impact of the community, and is working real hard to make sure that we can do everything we can to mitigate that. But this infrastructure that was put in place over many decades that frankly wasn't built to withstand what we're seeing now, and we will have to work very hard to mitigate that.
Yep, I understand. I just wanted to make sure our voice was heard down here, and I appreciate the good work. I really do, and I appreciate the thought and effort that is going into the mitigation for this project as well. So thank you.
we are right there with you. You know, we own a lot of the buildings in Research Park. Our nonprofit owns half the buildings, the other half are owned privately. And so we've actually had a bunch of our buildings flood. So we've been investing our own money and making improvements to prevent flooding in the park. And one of the big strategies is to use our prairies. We have these beautiful prairies that are also giant basins that like being wet and can handle a lot of stormwater. So for example, with the Exact Science project, all of the stormwater from that project actually runs underneath Whitney Way across the street into that prairie basin. And we're gonna use that same kind of strategy for part of this project. And in fact, right now the slipstream parking lot dumps into the Whitney Way stormwater. We actually think we might be able to disconnect that from Whitney Way. So our hope is that this project can improve the ability to detain the stormwater where it should be, not only, you know, for your benefit, but because it will protect our own buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are many people that were affected by that flood as well as us, of course. And we're appreciative of the planning and the good work that's being done.
All right. It is now after 9 o'clock. So I think we're gonna call this meeting. Alder Furman, if you had anything else, I would leave it to you, but otherwise I have put up my contact again on the screen. I believe that the applicant team is intending to submit their application very soon. The formal review period typically takes about 3 to 4 months. So I would anticipate this coming to Plan Commission and Common Council probably in February. Once an application does come in, you'd be able to see that on the City of Madison's Planning Division webpage. If you could just go to cityofmadison.com and click on the agencies at the top, you can drop down to planning and you'll be able to find it on there.
I just wanted, go ahead, Colin, I do want to say a word once you're done.
Yes, yep, and then I was just going to say, as the review goes on, you are more than welcome to send me comments and I will package those and pass those on to the Plan Commission and the Common Council. That's all I had.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you everybody for coming this evening. I did want to reiterate again that I do have a copy of the presentations from this evening and I will be posting them. This also was recorded and we'll go ahead and put up this recording. I expect this to be the first of will likely be a few more meetings as more of these plans get developed. As Colin explained earlier, the first level of approvals really just has to do with some land usage, and then as we get to actually the buildings and the building designs and stuff like that, I assume we'll have some more community meetings about that as well. So, please feel free to send feedback and you'll see those presentations posted in the next few days.
And Alder Furman, I'll reiterate, we welcome any additional comments outside of the context of the meeting. We'd love to interact and engage with people to make sure questions or comments that they have are heard by the developer.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.